Well, listeners, I'm taking my baseball bat and I'm swinging at that hornet's nest. It's time to talk about Dayton Sports Radio and why this podcast is much better than the two radio stations in town. It's been an episode that's been in the back of my mind for several years, and I've kept my mouth shut. But I cannot keep my mouth shut any longer. It's time to talk about both WING and WONE and why both radio stations have a Nielsen ranking of 0.5. Welcome to the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast with Lee W. Mowen. The podcast talking local Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio area sports. Listen on your favorite podcast platforms by visiting cindaypod.com. That's CINDAYPOD.com. Intro theme is Overdrive by Matrika from Uppbeat.io. Here's your host, Lee W. Mowen. Before I continue on, I'd like to reassure you this is not an episode where I'm going to direct insults. This is not an episode degrading everyone that works at these places. This is not an episode that's just trashing to trash for trash sakes. This is about my frustrations with both Dayton sports radio stations. And yes, you might think I have an axe to grind because I can't get hired in either of these places, but that's not the case. I am a sports fan that wants to hear about the local sports scene, and I can't do it in Dayton, Ohio. In fact, if I didn't run this podcast, I don't know how you get your sports information. I know the sports writers do a great job in town, and the TV sports anchors, they do a great job as well. Like I said, this is not an episode where I'm going to be grinding my axe just to grind my axe. I legitimately have an issue with both Dayton sports radio stations receiving a Nielsen ranking of 0.5. And yes, I had to redo that a couple times because I kept saying 0.05, and that is not correct. So Nielsen, I don't even know them. So this is a company that's been around for quite some time. This is about media management and measurement. In fact, it got its start 98 years ago, actually almost 100 years ago, back in 1923 by Arthur Nielsen. The headquarters are in New York City, where they get their salsa from or something. So basically what Nielsen does, they measure, from their Nielsen families, who watches or who listens to what. It's more commonly known as, the TV show, viewership, where they control things and they can pick up, ratings and say, oh, hey, 15% of the families watch show XYZ, and 85% did not. And the other rankings go to show ABC or show CBS or any of those shows. You get what I'm saying. It measures shows and people viewing them or listening to them. Nielsen's been around a long time, and for a few years, actually, my fiance was a Nielsen family member. I don't know how much we did. We stopped getting letters long time ago, so we're probably okay to talk about that now, aren't we? But Nielsen, I only thought did, American media, but apparently it services over 100 countries and employs about 44,000 people worldwide. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to think, how big Nielsen is. So this company pretty much invented market shares back in August 1923. Now, of course, back then, your main media was radio. TV was just starting to get into its own a few years later and didn't have color TV until, the 60s, maybe the late 50s. Radio was, always around, was around for a very, very long time. In fact, for us sportscasters, that's the birth of calling games and doing the action. Now we got streaming video, we got streaming audio, still have radio, still have TV. I mean, it's a different beast from when Nielsen started, but they seem to be able to keep up with the changes, which, I know they talk about streaming rankings Not just, like radio, but streaming audio, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, Nielsen is a pretty big standard. And from beonair.com, it explains, a Nielsen rating goes by percentage. In regards to a national television show, something like on NBC, ABC, CBS, I almost said WB. How old am I? I'm old. CW and all those stations. So if a program gets a Nielsen rating of 15, it means 15% of the public participating in the ratings watched a TV show, and 85% did not. Pretty simple. In a household that's got multiple individuals with multiple televisions, which I feel like it's fairly common. I mean, we have that with our family. Our stepkids have a TV, and my fiance and I have a TV in the bedroom, TV in the living room. That's our three. That's all we really need. The rating measured per household and not per person. So it means only one person or one television needs to be on the NBC program for it to count. Or you have the other programs. You get what I'm saying. Even if 4 out of the 5 family members watch something else. So it's essential for advertisers, because advertisers want to make sure they're getting their money's worth with advertising, of course, and also key demographics. You want them to go to the right people, right eyes, stuff like that. So it basically works the same in radio. And now that takes me to the Nielsen audio ratings update for Dayton, Ohio, February 22nd. And this is from radio-online.com. And I have both Dayton and Cincinnati, because we are going to talk about Cincinnati, because as much as I'm going to talk about Dayton Sports Radio not being perfect, Cincinnati's isn't either. In fact, if I'm correct, 1360 is kind of like 980 up here in Dayton, whereas it's mainly syndicated programming. Maybe you'll catch the Reds during spring training there. Louisville, Kentucky, Cincinnati's got two full-time sports radio stations in the immediate area. I know there's the one in Hamilton, which I think would go in Cincinnati's ratings, but we'll check on that in a little bit. Dayton's ratings, your leading station is WHKO-FM, which is 99.1 FM. Good friend of mine, Aaron Woods, has the morning show with Nancy Wilson, who's been a long-time stalwart in Dayton radio. And Aaron also formerly the voice of the Champion City Kings. So February 2022, a rating of 8.2. WDHT, which is Rhythmic. It's early in the morning when I'm recording this. Leave me alone. 6.7, which is actually the same rating as January 22. WMMX 1077, they got the morning show. And there's also the, I don't know if they still do it, the 80s Vault at noon. Their rating is 6.6. WHIO AM, News and Talk, 6.3. WTUE, that is 104.7 with the B-Man, 6.2. I should also mention WMMX, for those that aren't aware, the PA voice of the Dayton Flyers men's basketball team, Jeff Stevens. He tri-hosts the morning show with 2 others, and the names kind of escape me at the moment. Sorry. WROU outside the top 5 at 6. And then you got a little bit of a drop to WCHD at 3.6. And then there's WLW in Cincinnati, 2.7, which I have to assume is higher in Cincinnati. Oh, yeah. There's a big difference there, but this is Dayton rankings. One time WLW used to, go as far as Arizona at nighttime. I don't know if it still does it anymore. I don't think it does. So let's skip through the rest of these because I can show you they're not sports. WINGAM, which is ESPN 1410, 0.5. Last rating was 0.4. WONE, 0.5. Before, 0.9. So they lost a bit. Which, January, February, you'd still be in Wright State territory. Also Miami. They still have that. There's 5 stations that don't have updated rankings. WDPR, which is classical radio. WFTK, which is rock. I'm trying to think what station that is. That's Cumulus. That's got to be Cincinnati. WHIO FM, which is just the transmitter for the AM feed. WNKN, which is classic country. And I believe that was the former, well, that's an FM station. So what is that? 105.9, I guess. And WYSO, which is, NPR over in Yellow Springs. Those are the 5 that don't have updated rankings. But yeah, Wing and WONE tied for last. In fact, the 4 that it shows, November 21, December 21, January 22, and February 22, WONE actually had a lead over their counterparts. 1 to 0.6 in December and 0.9 to 0.4 in January, like I already mentioned. Yeah. Ooh, boy. Those are some low rankings. It's been pretty low for a time for WONE, and that brings me to my first radio station in question, 980 AM Dayton. Also with a HD radio feed, 104.7-2, and that's how I mainly listen to it because the audio quality is much better than AM. Although the Wright State games, not so much. It seemed like it was toned down HT quality, like it was... Like, you couldn't tell if it was FM quality, and it's just, yeah. So, 980 has had a history of sports talk hosts, Mark Schlemmer being probably the most well-known of the few I'm going to talk about. And someone I worked with at WWSU, Clint Davis, had a show for a little bit, and then he was replaced with Chick Ludwig, who has been a guest on this podcast and a good friend of mine. And he's down in Cincinnati doing his thing with Cincinnati iHeartRadio, mainly 700. And, Mark did a great job. I wish he was back on Wing, but, his health, I'm not going to go into that. He wants privacy. So, I wish Mark was back on radio. And, it is still nice to hear Chick on the radio. And I don't really know what Clint Davis does. He's got a podcast of his own, not sports related, but he works with his best friend from college on that as well. Since Chick Ludwig, no local sports talk. It's all syndicated, which means Dan Patrick, which, yes, Daytonian, got his start in Dayton as Dan Pugh on WDTN. Or was it still WOWD? I don't know about that, but he got his start in Dayton, and now you can listen to a syndicated talk show. There's Rich Eisen, and I don't know what's after or before those two, because I'll be quite honest with you, I don't like syndicated sports talk. I really don't, because every time I listen to it, it's always about the same thing. It's about, LeBron's not so great, or, look at James Harden take off, or something NBA or something NFL, and it's like, it's the off season. Talk about MLB. NBA, and it's like, it's all the same, spewed crap. And I feel like that with syndicated sports, it's all the same crap, just different voices to give it different flavors. And just sometimes the banner is just not interesting to listen to. And I know you can easily avoid this problem if you have satellite radio. I don't. I can't afford it. So there we go. 980 is more used on my radio for Dayton Dragons games with Tom Nichols. Wright State games, they moved back to 980 after a few years, about 6, 7, 8 seasons. It's been a while since they've been on 980. Although the coaches' talk shows were always on 980, but the games were on different iHeart stations. For a while, it was 105.9 before they transferred over to new ownership. Then it was 103.9, and my fiance was quite mad because, A, she loved Alt 103.9. I didn't because I missed the X, and that's what I used to lift to. Yeah, I used to lift. I used to be in shape. Now I'm round, which is still a shape. And now they're New Bull 103.9. It's another country station, which, by the way, that's another rabbit hole to go down one day, how there's about 22 country radio stations between Richmond, Dayton, and Cincinnati. Pick a different genre. Well, thank you for it. Honest. So 980 still has local sports broadcasts. They have Wright State. They got Miami coming through on a satellite. They're part of the syndication feed, which is now based out of, they're not out of 1450 WOMH anymore. They're out of 1013 Generation G in Richmond, which I guess that'd be more out of the ESPN radio station. But yeah, you get my point. And sometimes, if you listen to Miami games on 980, you will hear a lot of satellite feeds saying, hey, get ready for the broadcast. And yeah, that's happened on a road trip. Coming home from a hockey game, it was playing G1013. Like no one switched the station back over to 980 after the satellite feed. This is after a Miami basketball broadcast. And I'm like, why is 980 playing music? Did they have a genre change? And then I thought about it. And it's like, oh, they're still playing off a different station. By the way, that's not iHeart in Richmond. That's Whitewater, which is a local radio station group. They have a few stations. There's another one in Richmond, too. They have a few more, but I don't think they have sports. So, yeah, 980. Why no love for local sports talk? You saw how successful it was with Mark Schlemmer. And I know, Mark Schlemmer, very popular guy. He knew what he was doing. He had a great sports talk show. And a good guy. And hopefully he still considers me as a friend after this episode. Probably not, though. We did get into it because I was like, it'd be great if Dayton Sports Radio actually covered it. And then he had like about a 15 paragraph, share on that. It's like, really? Cincinnati Radio better than Dayton? Yeah, it is. It's like Dayton has local sports radio. Funny. The last time I listened to it was nothing but that team in Columbus. And the Browns being better than the Bengals. Although before that point, the Browns didn't get to the playoffs in a long time. But yeah, they were better than the Bengals. So, riddle me that. So 980. I know I've applied to a few jobs. I know I've said it's time to bring local sports talk back. Why isn't it a thing? I know people are dying for local sports. I know this. You know why? Because my podcast, when I actually get around to it, does good numbers. It really does. One day I'd like to ask some folks for advertising money, to get this podcast, making some money. That'd be great. But there's no love for high school football. There's no love for high school basketball, which, yes, I know I still need to do an episode on that, and college basketball, which is now finally done. Thanks to Xavier winning the NIT. Spoilers there for that episode, and whenever I get around to it. It's just, why? I know that someone comes in, has his nose to the ground on Dayton sports, can do a heck of a show. You got a loyal fan base in the Dayton Flyers and the Wright State Raiders, but man, UD Pride is just, man, I'm proud of the fact that they're so passionate about their team. They went through the Jim O'Brien era, which, yes, first year took him to the dance, but that was the previous coach's kids, Donaher, not Donahue. What am I talking about? Anyway, we have it made in Dayton. And yes, I know the minor league sports scene hasn't been as strong as it was, 10 years ago now, when we had an indoor football team in the Silverbacks, and afterwards the Sharks for 2 years had hockey with the Demons. Actually, back then was the Gems 2.0, which a lot of people fondly remember. And afterwards, people are like, Demons, which makes me sad because that was my team. And yeah, I mean, we had it all. We had minor league basketball. Well, I mean, we still do. We got the Dayton Flight, but they play in Wilberforce, which is east of Xenia, and that's not in the immediate Dayton area. It's in the metro, but it's, you know what I mean. It's not, stone's throw away in downtown. We do have soccer still, the Dayton Dutch Lions, but they're more of a collegiate summer team. No longer pro, no longer in what is now USL League 2. So, yeah, I mean, sports a little bit down in Dayton, but you can't tell me that people don't follow their teams to a T. And you can't tell me that Sports Talk wouldn't be successful on 980. You can't tell me that. You get some sponsors coming in, you have a gold mine you can sit on. I never understood it. I never understood it. And yes, I know it makes me a bit of a hypocrite listening to 980 because they have the Raiders games, the Dragons games, and Miami games. Yeah. Just because I listen to it doesn't mean I can't voice my frustrations on it. It doesn't mean that I can't say, hey, be more local. If you're going to have the banner Dayton Sports Station, actually, be involved in Dayton sports outside. Oh, here's some teams and here's their broadcast. You know what I mean? And that's my talk on 980. Now it's time to talk about 1410. Only on the AM dial and online. I had a lot of friends that used to work at 1410. There was a guy named Reed. He covered the Dragons, and we always used to talk. Shay Neal. I don't know if he still works at 1410, but he's doing a heck of a job running WWSU as the GM and former sports director. So there you go. Also, the guy that got this podcast on radio, which you think I'd actually, use that advantage, but it's just, hey, I'm a busy guy. And this spring is going to be kind of a blur until I get to Champion City Kings baseball. But outside that, and, I still have the interview up with Kinder and Schlemmer. And I thought about taking that episode down because there was a big falling out, because how dare I like comments that are insulting the host when they were very milquetoast. And, you can be a big homer if you want. That's fine. But if you don't, be fair one way and you're overly, okay with the Browns and you're just like, everything the Browns does is the Midas touch and everything the Bengals does is crap. And everything kind of points to no, both are crap. And now the Bengals have the Midas touch. Knock on wood. Yeah. Also, good job getting your best friend to continually insult me on Twitter. That's cool. Thanks for that. So I stopped listening to 1410. And I know here's a lot of people going, well, you can't criticize them. Oh, yes, I can. Why? Because every time I listen to it, it's always about that team in Columbus. I do not care about that team in Columbus. I know there's that team Columbus fans in Dayton. And plenty of them are that team Columbus fans because their parents rooted for them. They went to that team in Columbus. They went to that team in Columbus. That sounds weird, but there you go. But it doesn't need to be all 3 hours. Nor does worshiping the Browns and the Bengals are crap and all Bengals fans are crap. It doesn't need to be like that. And that's when I stopped. I just, it was shortly after Schlemmer left, which again, be nice to have Mark Schlemmer back on radio. But, it is what it is. I don't need to hear about that team in Columbus for 3 hours. There's other sports going on, especially in Dayton. And I feel like the local sports coverage has went down. I don't even know if they do high school football anymore, honestly. And that's sad because, love listening to high school football. Problem is, nowadays, working in Cincinnati, I get to spend, I say it's a problem. It's not a problem. I get to listen to Tri-State Football's post-game show where they have all the scores and everything. They talk to some of the victorious coaches. Man, that's a great run show. I wish Dayton had something like that or just syndicate that because, yes, they do talk about Dayton teams, because there's conferences that go in Dayton, Cincinnati. You know how that works. So, yeah, I stopped listening to it. And, you can be mad at me for talking about this all you want, but I'm not the only one. I won't mention names because it's not my place to, out people that don't like the show, but there's a lot of people that don't. And you know why I say you don't get local sports on Dayton Sports Radio anymore? Because you don't. Columbus is an hour away. If you're going to talk about that team in Columbus, mix them with some Crew, Blue Jackets, which Wing actually carried for half a season. But WMO, I can't say that station's name. WMOH does. They're Cincinnati, home of the Blue Jackets. And yes, there's a lot of good hockey fans between Cincinnati and Dayton. And I will fight to the end on that. But there we go. It's just, I don't feel the Dayton love anymore. You know what I mean? And that's why I stopped listening to 1410. I know a lot of people have stopped listening to 1410 for other reasons. But I do want to bring up one take that I think is just the worst I've ever come across. And trust me, I've heard my worst ones come across. I might have had some really bad takes, like, this podcast doesn't talk about that team in Columbus. That's probably a bad take in most listeners' eyes, but I don't care. If you want that team in Columbus news, listen to 1410. Guaranteed you'll be caught up within the hour. And of course, now that I'm pulling up this take, Facebook decides not to load. So, yippee-ki-yay, mother truckers. So yeah, I can remember the takeoff topic. Joey Votto has embraced the losing culture. Let me pull it up. This guy embraces losing and never holds his organization accountable. I poke at Burrow and the Bengals, but Burrow embraces winning and is the face of Cincinnati. The fact that Votto has yet to force his way out shows he's content with losing, and he refuses to hold the front office accountable. I can't support that. Yeah, I saw a lot of people say this is an awful take. There's some people that went along with it, but that's an awful take. That's the worst take I've ever read. You do realize that Joey Votto and Joe Burrow are two different people, right? Just because they share the same first name doesn't mean they're the same person. You do realize that, right? Okay, now that you finally figured that out, how long has it taken Joey Votto to come out of his shell? He's battled demons. He's battled his dad passing away. I'm pretty sure his dad passed away. I was very sick at the time. He's not the same person. Why are you holding him to that same standard? Joe Burrow's come in with this swagger, and that's great. That's what the Bengals needed. Joey Votto's got his own swagger. He's a goofy Canadian. I love him on our team. And to say that he embraces losing? No. He's a man of his word. He loves Cincinnati. Cincinnati's embraced him. He's embraced Cincinnati. You might have a slight point on, he needs to hold his front office accountable. Well, so does everyone else. You can't just pick on Votto because he's got that huge contract. You just can't. The dude has proven to me that he wants to be a Red. And I don't blame Votto for the failings of the Reds. I blame the Reds front office. How do you almost compete for a playoff spot and have the tools to succeed? I'm still mad about this. And then get rid of most of them. Castellanos, I've gotten over that point now. I don't think the Reds were able to afford him, but at least talk to him. I'm sure he would have came back if you talked to him. I say I'm sure he'd come back, but I'm sure he would have listened at least. Not saying you would talk to him. It's a surefire thing to come back to Cincinnati, but talk to him and his agent. Don't let him just walk off to Philadelphia without a mutter towards him like, we haven't talked to him. Really? Jesse Winker was part of your future. Why are you getting rid of him? I get it. You need to offload Eugenio Suarez. Fine. There's not another piece on that. And yes, I've also gotten over Sonny Gray. I mean, if Hunter Green is ready, cool. Nick Dolo, I don't know if he's quite ready. But anyway, back to that take. I'm getting off track. Really? He's embraced losing? That's why, after every loss, he's like, yay, we lost again. Praise the Reds for giving me this large contract. No. He's a dude that has honored his contract. And you know what? Kudos to him. He's actually staying put. He hasn't complained. I mean, yeah, he did have that little spat saying that, front office, what you doing? So, I mean, that's a complaint, technically. But outside that, has the dude ever complained? Embrace losing. Give me a break. And yes, I am in agreement that the Reds front office has wasted a generational talent in Joey Votto. How the dude doesn't have a playoff series win is beyond me. And it hurts to talk about it when I'm talking about Dayton Sports Radio. Both stations having a 0.5 rating, and it's turned out to be a big risk. You see what I mean, though? That's an awful take. Come on. I know you gotta think of topics to talk about, and I know this podcast doesn't do that. It's about updates. It's mostly about updates. This is probably the first hot take episode I've ever had. I don't like hot takes. I honestly don't. I'm here to tell you what's going on in the Cincinnati-Dayton area, and hopefully you join along and you like listening in. That's me. I'm not about, does LeBron James have like secret stuff from Space Jam 2 and, the Lakers are losing because LeBron James and stuff like that. I know that's more Skip Bayless than anything, but still, come on. You get what I'm saying. Radio needs to be better in the Dayton area. It just needs to be better. So after bashing both radio stations, I put bashing in quotes because really what I said was milquetoast. Other than the worst take I've ever seen, which that's not milquetoast, but that's the truth. That's what I feel. It's the worst take I've ever seen. And there's been a few doozies. But what should be done? Dayton sports radio needs to be better. Many people, listen to Cincinnati, Columbus Sports Radio. There's Lima, does a nice job. In fact, Marty Bannister, when he ran the show, I listened in a lot because Marty did a great job. Also helped that Marty brought me on for a segment to talk about Cincinnati and Southwest Ohio football for a few minutes. That was fun. Thank you, Marty. Need to have you on the podcast sometime soon, too. Need to have a bunch of people on the podcast. I just don't have time. But there we go. So what should be done to get people back in? I'm not here to say everyone should lose their jobs. That's not me. I don't want to play mean like that. I just want Dayton Sports Radio to be better than it is. Look at iHeart moving into the Dayton Arcade after years of being abandoned. You're in downtown Dayton. Act like you're in downtown Dayton. There's sports everywhere. There's great events that are happening every day. And you can't tell me, you just can't tell me the fact that, there's no local sports in the area. That's crap, and you know it. And yeah, you might say, well, high school sports, and that's it. No, there's other things to talk about. I never said you can't talk about the big teams. I just said that I wish that sports talk wasn't only those teams. I want local back in local sports. It's crazy, I know. So that's really needs to be done. Bring local back. And as ideas to get local back and to say, hey, bring local sports back, your guess is as good as mine. Like I said, I've applied to iHeart and Alpha so many times I've lost count. I've had a handful of interviews at iHeart and one at Alpha, and that was it. So, again, you might think it's me grinding an axe because, everyone's got jobs except for me. No, I don't mind the grind. I just want one day that the grind actually pays out in spades. I'm close to 1,500 sports broadcasts. I'm over 500 games announced as a PA announcer. I've seen my share of sports. What more do you want? I've been running this podcast since summer 2017. In fact, July will be 5 years of this podcast. I've interviewed people. What more do you want? Also, I should mention, after Mark Schlemmer retired from Wing, I did put in like, hey, if you need a co-host. No, I'm not looking for a co-host. Week later, it's his friend in the radio station. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of the beginning of the end right there. And, if you're mad, I don't care. I'm right. The fact that a 0.5 rating is bad. You know it. I know it. And people that, study ratings know it. 0.5. Yes, I know. Not everyone's a sports fan. I get that. That's fine. But 0.5? In an area that loves college basketball, high school sports? 0.5? Really? 0.5. 0.5. I know what you're also thinking. Well, Lee, if you're so much better, then why don't you do your show more frequently? Well, here's the thing. I can't. I mean, I'm barely getting enough time to, do this episode. And after this is all said and done, I send it off to where it needs to go. I upload it and everything. I got to get ready for another broadcast. I'm raising a family. I'm raising 2 stepkids that are growing up right before my eyes. I got to raise a family. I got to raise, my own career as, someone that's good with the mic. I got a lot on my plate. And I'm sorry that this podcast has tailed off into almost complete radio silence, but it's just, I look up on my calendar, my dry erase calendar. I got games every day except Thursday. And even then, that might not be a day off. I'm busy. It's going to take a lucrative full-time offer for me to just say, okay. I'm not about working for free anymore. So, don't offer me to do something for free for 3 hours. I'm not doing that. I deserve money because I deserve pay for a job well done. So I don't know what I can suggest. I suggest nonviolence, of course. I'm not saying anyone go storm the stations or anything. I'm not saying that. Don't do it. If you say that I said it, I will play this part of the podcast episode and say, no, I didn't say to do that. So, yeah, there you go. You could try reaching out and saying, hey, we'd like to have local sports. There's that. I mean, social media, I always put out a thing about once every year, like, hey, I'm for hire. You should hire me. And every year, not a peep. Like I said, after the interviews, I'm not fully convinced, but I'm pretty sure my resume goes straight in the shredder. I like to know why. I like to know what I'm doing wrong. Why I can't, be employed where, I'm helping a Cincinnati broadcast company, a Dayton broadcast company, a radio station up in Piqua, and I'm not good enough? Really? Okay, it is starting to turn out to be grinding my axe, but again, no insults, except worst take, but if you take that as an insult, I can't help you. Sorry. Deal with other people's opinions. They're differing. And everyone's got a different opinion. Don't like it, then don't know what to tell you. So, you might be wondering, with all this Dayton sports radio talk, is Cincinnati's any better? Well, every time I work around Cincinnati, it's on 1530 listening to Mo Egger. And I sound like a broken record at this point. I don't care. I need to get Mo Egger on my podcast one day. Don't know if that'll happen, but yeah, there's a lot of people I need to invite on the podcast. We'll see how it gets, though. So I have Cincinnati's Nielsen ratings, and WLW, no, it's not a full-time sports talk station, but when you're thinking Cincinnati sports, what's the station you tune into for Reds, Bengals, University of Cincinnati, sometimes Xavier if UC's not playing. It's WLW. You got Lance McAllister, does sports talk in the evenings. You'll have the opening day show when the Reds start, which you have, now I can't think of his name. Bill Cunningham. How could I not think of his name? A couple years back say, "We do not have Joe DiMaggio on this team. I'm the great American." It's like, well, thank you, because I think Joe DiMaggio stopped playing a long time ago, before I was born. But, thank you for letting me know he's not on the Reds. But other than that, that's where my radio dial is most of the time. It's listening to Reds, Bengals, UC, Xavier. It's listening to sports. Now I just wish FC Cincinnati was on WLW, which I know Reds probably makes it impossible, but I can't listen to FC Cincinnati most of the time because A, I'm in Dayton, and B, the signals don't pick up as well. So there you go. It is second in the Cincinnati market, 0.3 behind WGRR, which is classic hits. I thought they had sports for a while. I'm thinking of another group of stations. 12.6 to 12.3 WGRR over WLWAM. WGRR's ranking went down slightly. WLW's went up slightly by, what would that be? 0.8 down for GRR and 0.8 up for WLW. Looking at the other stations, WKRP in Cincinnati. No, sorry. WKRQ FM at 6.8. I think that's 101.9. But Cincinnati radio, I know a few call signals, and that's kind of it. I see W102. Did I say W102? WEBN 102.7. They got a 4.6 ranking, so it's okay. Now we go to the full-time Cincinnati sports radio stations. WCKY, that is 1530 ESPN Cincinnati, 1.1, which is only 0.6 better than 980 and 1410 in Dayton. And WSIA, which again, I'll admit, I don't really listen to it because I'm pretty sure it's all syndicated until you get to the live sports broadcast, 0.6. And no, that's not last. WMKV-FM, which is Nostalgia, that's the station in Norwood. They had a job opening, but it was only part-time, so I didn't apply. 0.1. WGUC, which is Jazz, Cincinnati Public Radio, 0.1. WNKR, 0.3. WMKV, 0.4, which has to be a translator for that last one. So not last, but it's towards the bottom. And for CKY, that's a shame because, again, I listen to Mo Egger and I enjoy Mo Egger. He's passionate. He knows what he's talking about. And he's not overly like Joey Votto is the devil and should not be in a Reds uniform because he likes losing. He'll have his takes there, but they're not anything that are just like, really? So yeah, I do enjoy listening to Cincinnati Sports Radio, and I think it's better, but I told you the rankings, not by much. So there you go. It is crazy to think. Actually, can I find Columbus ones? Let's see real quick. By the way, Cincinnati, the 33rd radio market, and Dayton, the 63rd. That's kind of why I'm saying, hey, why are both Dayton sports radio stations at 0.5 when we're up there in the media markets? Heck, one point Dayton was in the top 50. I think it's top 75 at least. Let's find Columbus. 36, according to this. And the problem is, I don't know what the fans' call letters are, which is pretty troublesome. I will say I've listened to the fan when I've been in Columbus. I don't get it outside Springfield. And really, I'm not outside Springfield for any reason because all my work is in Southwest Ohio. I'm pretty sure BNS is the fan. Actually, let's go check that. 97.1 The Fan. And I was having a conversation. That's what got this podcast episode underway. Saying that the only problem they had with the fan was it's too Ohio Statey, which I know is a great term I just came up. But I'm giving, yes, it is WBNS. Woohoo, I was right. So I'll give them a pass on that because it's in Columbus. It's not like 2 hours away, 1 hour away, and everyone's worshiping it. I'll give them a pass. I'm not listening to it, but I'll give them a pass because you know what? They do talk about the Crew, the Blue Jackets, the Clippers. I'm pretty sure they talked about the Destroyers when they were back in town. And if the Wild Dogs ever become a thing, they'll probably talk about that. What I listen to The Fan, they love Columbus sports. And there's high school in there, which is a really big scene too. Football, basketball, hockey, thanks to the Blue Jackets. You know, by the way, the ranking for The Fan, 8.8, second best. Behind WTVN AM, which is 9.3. Ahead of WOSU, which is at Ohio State, 8.3. WNCI, 7.6. And WCOL, which is country, at 6.7. Fun story about WCOL. Back in the day when there was an affiliate with... Actually, were they a direct affiliate? I thought they were. The Columbus Horizon. They were there for a few years. They were the station that carried Horizon games, which I don't know if pro basketball ever returned to Columbus because, you know, you got the Blue Jackets, you got that team in Columbus, you got the Ever Colleges in Columbus. It's possible, but Columbus is a pretty nice hockey town. I will say that, despite, you know, Blue Jackets constantly letting everyone down. And the problem is, outside of just looking to see what sports, actually, I don't. Oh, there's WBNS AM, which is 0.6, but it's AM. So now the rankings, you know, does AM affect that? Well, if you got an FM option, yeah, because FM sounds cleaner. Got an HD radio option, then that's better because it sounds crystal clear like you're hearing through a pair of headphones. And I know I might as well just be a salesman for frickin' HD radio, but you know what? I love it. So, you know, go away or something. So, yeah. I don't honestly know if Columbus has more sports talk. And again, that's me not being around Columbus enough to answer that question. I mean, heck, before our visit for ABA basketball, what was that, January or February? One of those two. But the last time was a few years back, and I forget what I was doing. Maybe ice hockey. I think it was ice hockey. But there you go. So in my opinion, yeah, Cincinnati Sports Radio is better because they're actually talking about Cincinnati Sports Radio. And I mentioned that TriStateFootball.com has a scoreboard show after pretty much all the games finish during the fall season. It'd be kind of silly to have one during the off season because, yeah, you don't have any games. And really off-season work, when are you going to run out of options? I mean, you can interview all the coaches, I guess, but you get what I'm saying. And again, that's a big thumbs up for me for Tri-State football. Also, I mentioned WOMH, which is weird because that's not in the Cincinnati rankings at all. You think because Hamilton's tricky because they're in between Dayton and Cincinnati. So are they more Cincinnati? Are they more Dayton? I don't see them on the ranking at all. Of course, it helps if I am off the Columbus one. Way to go, me. WMOH is not on the Cincinnati rankings at all, which surprises me. But I'm wondering if because of that, let's try finding it. Maybe I can find the rankings on that. I do like the job that WMOH does. Yes, most of their stuff is syndicated. They were through Yahoo Sports Radio for a while, but I think they're now on CBS Sports Radio, which is different because it's not Fox Sports. It's not ESPN. So it's something different. It's new voices. And over 75 years serving Butler County. And I think it just took me to the website and actually showing me the rankings. Yeah, it actually did that. Why? Why is that? I just want to see the rankings. Oh, who cares? Maybe they're not participating in Nielsen rankings. I don't know. But there are other options. And I kind of wish the Cincinnati gas prices widget on WOMH's website was correct, because it says gas is $2.71. Cheapest I saw was $3.69, but you got to be a Sam's Club member for that. So there you go. So yes, there's other options. There's podcasts you can listen to. Sure. There's, like I said, Hamilton has one. If you can pick up the Fan, there's that one. I mentioned I like Cincinnati Sports Radio. You might not like Mo or Lance or Chick or any of those, but that's your own taste. I'm fine with all three of them, honestly. I just want Dayton radio to be better. I'm a Daytonian. I'm from West Alexandria. I'm proud to be around here, but the sports radio is just making me shake my head. And it's serious because I actually use a meme for the box art for this episode. A meme! Me! Who am I kidding? I probably just do it anyway. I'm hip. How's it going, fellow young ones or something? I don't know. So my closing thoughts for this episode. Again, this is not an episode to bash people. It's not an episode to say you're all doing a terrible job. It's saying you can do better. I believe you guys can do better. I want you guys to do better because I want to listen to Dayton radio and say that I'm listening to Dayton radio proudly. Of course, the alternative is I'd rather be on Dayton radio and have my own show, but until then, I got this podcast, and it's nice to talk to the listeners and not insult you because your opinion differs from mine. And speaking of that, you can totally say I'm a nut job for thinking this, and you're like, well, Dayton radio is fine. What are you talking about? I enjoy it. That's fine. More power to you. I don't. That's why I'm raising my voice. And I will also let you in on a little secret. On the old laptop, I actually have an episode, which I think is episode 104, talking about this very thing. And I was more positive. I was more like, okay, guys, you can do better. Whereas this one, I know I've, said my piece, and now I leave it at that. I've said my piece. And again, you can disagree with me, agree with me. It's my opinion. And my opinion is Dayton Sports Radio should be better. Absolutely. It can be better because this area deserves it. If you don't know Dayton, Ohio, we're the hardest working sons of guns you'll ever meet. That's the second time I use sons of guns. I need to go lie down after this, but that's not happening. But, I love Dayton. I'll always love Dayton. It's my home city. I love Cincinnati. It's my dream city to work in, and I've been working a lot in the Queen City thanks to Rob Ebel and ESP Media, and also a little bit with Kevin Fowler and TKDS Sports. So what am I saying to you? Dayton Sports Radio can be better. And until it becomes better, you have this podcast. And I welcome you, no matter who you root for, to listen in, to enjoy yourselves, to make comments, say you agree with me or say you suck. I don't really care. I'll just laugh at you, say you suck. It's like, okay. It's like, I could do a better podcast, then why don't you? But, hey, I do enjoy this podcast, even though I've only been able to release about an episode or two per month. My ideal thing is release one every week, but it's not something I can do at the moment. Maybe during the summer, I don't know. But again, raising a family, working my own career, and being a supportive fiance to my soon-to-be wife, it's time management. I underestimate time. One of my college radio friends has a post, and it's like, oh, that sounds corny, but you don't realize how true that is until you look back at it. So you can address all complaints or all compliments to social media, Sunday Pod and the Lee W. Mowen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at the Lee W. Mowen. And my website, theleewmowen.com or CindayPod.com. If you want to have your own say, maybe I'll have an additional episode like this person brings up a good point or something like that. This isn't just my podcast that I make. It's your podcast to enjoy and interact with. And I hope more people do. So I guess that'll wrap it up. I'm trying to stall to make it 1 hour flat just so I can send it to WWSU, which you're probably listening to now. If not, then, podcast. Yay. I promise whenever I get time, I will do the college basketball wrap up. And the only reason why, well, time. But this wrap up is covering all the teams in the area. I'm talking Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior colleges, or community colleges if you prefer. And I'm talking about ORCC and USCAA. I'm talking about all of them. Because you know what? They deserve a little coverage too. And I am very proud to say, eventually, I'll get to it. And hopefully, one day I'll have Tony Peters and Seth Keim on. They are doing their event this weekend. And Miami Valley Communications Council is airing those games. But I know Seth and Tony, they do a great job. It's always great to have them on this podcast to talk previews. And I want them back on to talk about playoffs, championships, and their thoughts on the whole season. It's going to be a great episode once I finally get that nailed down. But until then, this is the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. We're short an hour. We'll be fine. Until next episode, hopefully it's not in May. Hopefully it's in April, but we'll see how it goes. This is Lee W. Mowen, your host, signing off. Thank you for listening. It's always appreciative. It's always appreciated. And we'll talk more real soon. Thank you for listening to the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast with Lee W. Mowen. Be sure to bookmark CindayPod.com, spelled CINDAYPOD, the official website of the podcast. You can find your favorite ways of listening to the local Cincinnati Sports Podcast, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon Music, the iHeartRadio app, and many more. You can also purchase merchandise from TeePublic and Redbubble to help support the podcast. Follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CindayPod and the host at the Lee W. Mowen. The closing theme is Cosmopolitan from Pecan Pie on Uppbeat. This is Lee W. Mowen signing off another episode of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. Thank you for your continued listenership and join me on the next episode.